إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد, then to continue with Aqeedatut Tahawiyyah, the creed compiled by Imaam Abu Ja'far at-Tahaawee, rahimahullaah, with the explanation of Shaykh Saleh Al Fawzan, hafidhahullah. Then last week we had 2 points. Points 178 and 179. The first point being with regard to al-istita'ah, the person's capability and his ability. And the second point, point 179, with regard to the actions of the servants being created by Allah and done and earned by the people themselves. Then with regard to the next point that at-Tahaawee rahimahullah brings, point 180, then at-Tahaawee rahimahullah said, وَلَمْ يُكَلِّفْهُمُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى إِلَّا مَا يُطِيقُونَ. وَلَمْ يُكَلِّفْهُمُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى إِلَّا مَا يُطِيقُونَ. And Allah the Most High did not burden them except with what they are capable of. Shaykh al Fawzan said in explanation, He, the Most High, said, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah, ayah 286. With the explanation, Allah does not place duties on a soul except in accordance with what it can bear. And he mentions a further part of the same ayah, رَبَّنَا وَلَا تُحَمِّلْنَا مَا لَا طَاقَةَ لَنَا بِهِ. Surah Al-Baqarah, the same ayah, ayah 286. With the explanation, O our Lord, do not burden us with duties which we are unable to carry out. And he quotes a third ayah, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Surah Al-Baqarah, second surah, ayah 185. With the explanation, Allah desires ease for you, and He does not desire difficulty. Shaykh al Fawzan comments and says, so Allah does not place duties upon the people which they are incapable of, except, and he mentions the exception here to that Allah does not place duties on the people, upon the servants, which they are incapable of, except as a punishment. Min babil uquba, except as a punishment. And he said, just as He overburdened the Banu Israel because of their rebellious defiance. Just as He did with the Banu Israel, just as He overburdened them, gave them duties they could not carry out because of their rebellious defiance, because of their wickedness and their rebelliousness. And Shaykh Fawzan quotes the ayah, فَبِظُلْمٍ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ طَيِّبَاتٍ أُحِلَّتْ لَهُمْ وَبِصَدِّهِمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا وَأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَا. Surah An-Nisa, the fourth surah, ayahs 160 and 161, with the explanation, so as a punishment for the wrongdoing of the Jews, we made forbidden for them certain good foods which had been lawful for them, and because of their deterring many people from Allah's religion, and their taking riba, their taking usury. Shaykh al Fawzan said, so therefore Allah punished them and placed duties upon them which they were not capable of. And therefore there occurs in the dua, in the supplication, and again he quotes the ayah before the last from Surah Al-Baqarah, the one that was read today in the Isha prayer. رَبَّنَا وَلَا تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْنَا إِصْرًا كَمَا حَمَلْتَهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِنَا. And because of what happened to Banu Israel, that now Allah has given this dua for the believers from this ummah, رَبَّنَا وَلَا تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْنَا إِصْرًا كَمَا حَمَلْتَهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِنَا, with the explanation, O our Lord, and do not place a burden upon us like that which you placed upon those who came before us. Shaykh al Fawzan said, so Allah, as a favor, fadlan minhu, as fadl, so Allah as a favor from Him, and as ihsan, as fine treatment, does not place duties upon the servants except that which they are capable of, as a mercy from Him. For indeed, He is one who bestows mercy. He is Rahim. Inna Allaha bin nasi la ra'ufun rahim. Surah Al-Baqarah, 2nd Surah, Ayah 143, with the explanation, indeed Allah is most compassionate to the people and merciful to them. So Shaykh al Fawzan makes the point that with regard to the people from this ummah, that as a favor from Allah and as fine treatment from Him, He does not place duties upon the servants except duties that they are capable of carrying out, and as a mercy from Him. That's where Shaykh al Fawzan ends explanation of this first point. Then as for the next point, then Imaam at-Tahaawee, rahimahullaah, he said, وَلَا يُطِيقُونَ إِلَّا مَا كَلَّفَهُمْ. He said, and they are only capable of doing what they have been enjoined with. Or they are only capable of doing the duties that have been placed upon them. As for this point, then Shaykh al Fawzan said, هذا فيه نظر. This is a disputable matter. In other words, it's a matter that the Shaykh is going to correct. This is not something correct. So this is a matter which is disputable. Rather, they are capable of doing more than the duties that have been placed upon them. I mean, the duties that Allah has placed upon us, then we're actually capable of doing more than that, contrary to the point that at-Tahaawee, rahimahullah, brings here. So Shaykh al Fawzan is correcting this point. He said, rather, they are able to do more than the duties which have been placed upon them. However, Allah wishes to make things easy for them and does not wish to make things, or He does not wish difficulty for them. So therefore Allah removed difficulty from them, and He legislated for them the easy religion, and He forbade them from increasing upon that which is moderate and justly balanced. And the Shaykh gives some examples to make this clear. He said, so it is not permissible for a person to pray for the whole of the night. And likewise, it is not permissible for him to abandon getting married. And then he gives the evidence for this. He said, he, alayhi salatu wassalam, said, أما أنا فأصلي وأنام وأتزوج النساء وأصوم وأفطر فمن رغب عن سنتي فليس مني. The saying of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as for myself, then I pray and I sleep, and I marry women, and I fast and I abstain from fasting. So whoever turns away from my sunnah, then he is not from me. In a footnote they mention, this hadith is reported by Al-Bukhari as hadith 5063. And you'll find it there in the book of Nikah, the book of marriage, the first chapter, the first hadith. And also reported by Muslim, also in the book of Nikah, Kitabun Nikah, the book of marriage, from a hadith of Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu. Famous hadith about three of the companions who wanted to strive and do extra worship. One of them saying that he would pray the whole of the night and not sleep. One of them saying that he would fast the whole of the time and not leave a day when he didn't fast. And one saying that, as for myself, I will leave off getting married. So then the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard that, he came out and he corrected them. He rebuked them and corrected them with this hadith. As for myself, then I pray and I sleep also. And I marry women, and I fast, and I also abstain from fasting. And whoever turns away from my sunnah, then he is not from me. Then Shaykh al Fawzan, hafidhahullah, he said, so Allah does not place upon them duties which would place them in hardship. And if Allah were to place those duties upon them, then they would be capable of them. However, He is not pleased for them that they should be put into hardship and difficulty. So he ends making the point that duties which Allah has not put upon us, if He were to put them upon us, further duties, then the people would be able to carry them out. However, it would result in difficulty. And as the Shaykh said, and Allah is not pleased for them that they should be put into hardship and difficulty. Then briefly, also in the notes that Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah and Shaykh al Albaani rahimahullah, they have to this book, they make the same correction as Shaykh al Fawzan makes here. At this point, as it stands here, is not correct. That the people have only been given duties, or rather the people can only do what they have been duty bound to do, and they couldn't carry out any more. And both Shaykh bin Baz and Shaykh al Albaani rahimahullah, they make the same correction of this point. That rather people are able to carry out more than that. But rather Allah, from His favour, has made it easy for them. And also Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Aziz ibn Mani' rahimahullah, he makes a correction of the point as well, and we'll just read what he says. He says, with regard to this point, وَلَا يُطِيقُونَ إِلَّا مَا كَلَّفَهُمْ بِهِ, and they are only capable of doing that which has been put upon them. He said, meaning they are only capable of doing what they have been given the ability to carry out. And the reason that the Shaykh said this is there's two, and likewise Shaykh al Albaani made the same point, there's two ways that we could understand what at-Tahaawee is actually saying here. Where he's saying, وَلَا يُطِيقُونَ إِلَّا مَا كَلَّفَهُمْ, it could be understood that what he's saying is, and what's apparent, the people are only capable of doing the duties that have been placed, the religious duties that have been placed upon them. And that point is not correct. Or it could mean, he could be trying to say that the people are only capable of doing that which Allah gives them the ability to do. And that would be something different. So Shaykh Ibn Mani said, meaning they are capable only of that which they are given the ability to carry out. As for the explainer, meaning Ibn Abil Izz, then he refuted the author about this point. Since the term at-taklif is not used to mean giving ability to. I mean, that other possible explanation, that the people are only capable of doing what they've been given the ability over. If that was what the author meant, then it's not correct in the language to say it in that way. To say kallafahum means what they've been given the ability to do. This would not be correct. So therefore Ibn Abil Izz, he refuted that point. So if that's what he means, it's not correct to say it in this way. Because this term means being given commands and prohibitions. And then he said, and that is not correct, meaning that they are only capable of doing the duties that have been placed upon them. This is not correct. If that's what at-Tahaawee meant, meaning it's not correct. That's not a correct fact. It's not true. He said, rather they are capable, just as Shaykh al Fawzan said, and Shaykh al Albaani said, and Shaykh al Izz said, rahimahullaah, said, rather they are capable of more than that. They are capable of doing more than the duties that have been put upon them. Then he gives an example to make that clear. He said, I say, because it is possible for a person that he could pray more than 5 daily prayers. I mean, a person could, if he had to pray 6 or 7, he could do it. But Allah has not made that duty upon us. And he could fast more than 1 month. And he could perform Hajj more than once. I mean, that's possible for a person. So to say that we're not able to do except what's been made binding upon us is not therefore correct. Then he said, so a person could do that if it was made upon him. However, he, the perfect, wishes ease for his servants, and he does not desire difficulty for them. Just as he, the Most High, said, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ. Surah An-Nisa, the 4th surah, ayah 28, with the explanation, Allah desires to lighten the burden upon you. He said, and he, the Most High, said, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Surah Al-Hajj, the 22nd surah, ayah 78, with the explanation, and Allah has not placed any hardship upon you in the religion. Then Shaykh Ibn Mani, rahimahullah, he finished by saying, and that which is indicated by the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger is the truth and is what is correct. In other words, that people could, if Allah had placed more duties, the people could have carried them out, even if it be with more difficulty. But Allah wished ease, and therefore He did not enjoin the people with more. As for the next point, point 182, then at-Tahaawee, rahimahullah, he continued, وَهُوَ تَفْسِيرُ لَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ نقول لا حيلة لأحد ولا حركة لأحد ولا تحول لأحد عن معصية الله إلا بمعونة الله ولا قوة لأحد على إقامة طاعة الله والثبات عليها إلا بتوفيق الله. The saying of Imam at-Tahaawee, rahimahullah, continuing from the previous point and the one before it, he said, and this is the explanation of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no change and no power except with Allah's aid. We say there is no maneuvering for anyone and no movement for anyone and no moving for anyone away from sin, and there is no power for anyone over establishing obedience to Allah and remaining firm upon it, except by Allah's tawfiq, except by Allah's granting successful attainment of that. So just repeat that point. He said, and this is the explanation of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no change and no power except with Allah's aid. We say there is no maneuvering for anyone and no movement for anyone and no moving for anyone away from sin, and there is no power for anyone over establishing obedience to Allah and remaining firm upon it, except, meaning all of that, except by Allah's granting successful attainment of that. I mean, none of that can happen except with Allah's tawfiq, with Allah's aid and tawfiq, His aid and His granting it. Shaykh al Fawzan, hafidhullah, he said in explanation, La hawla means there is no changing from one condition to another condition. So to explain the phrase, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This phrase, that, as we know in the authentic narration, that this is one of the treasures beneath the arsh. The saying, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So Shaykh al Fawzan said, the first part, La hawla, means there is no changing from one condition to another condition. Illa billah, except with Allah, the Mighty and Majestic, and with His aid. And that cannot happen, any change from one condition to a different condition. It cannot happen except with Allah and with His i'ana, with His aid. Then he said, and likewise, he explained the second part, وَلَا قُوَّةٍ, and there is no power. He said, and likewise, you have no power unless Allah, the Mighty and Majestic, grants you power from His power. Then he summarizes this whole phrase, and he says and describes what's meant by this phrase. He said, what it entails, he said, so this involves submitting and freeing yourself from claiming to have the ability to change and having power. So therefore, a person does not become deluded into admiring his own ability to change things, nor with his own power. Rather, he turns back to Allah, the Mighty and Majestic. So therefore, you seek the aid of Allah. In other words, you don't just depend to carry something out. You don't depend upon your own, what you think is your own ability and your own power. Rather, you turn back, as the Shaykh said. He turns back to Allah, the Mighty and Majestic, and you seek the aid of Allah, and therefore you seek the aid of Allah, so that He aids you upon obedience and moves you away from sin to obedience, and away from unbelief to Islam. So everything occurs by Allah's bringing about the change. and through His power. And if He were to leave you to your own ability to change, then you would not be able to do so. And the Shaykh said, and likewise, working hard and striving to earn wealth. This working hard and this effort is from you. However, the grant of success and the placing of blessing in that is from Allah, the Mighty and Majestic. In other words, the Shaykh mentioned the means that the people have to carry out. That is from the people. But as for it succeeding, Allah's tawfiq, Allah's granting it, that it succeeds, and Allah's placing blessing in the effort, then those are from Allah, the Mighty and Majestic. Then Imaam at-Tahaawee, rahimahullaah, continues, وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ يَجْرِي بِمَشِيئَةِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَعِلْمِهِ وَقَضَائِهِ وَقَدَرِهِ. And everything occurs with the will of Allah, the Most High, and with His knowledge, and with His ordainment and pre-decree. Shaykh al Fawzan said, Hafidhullah, nothing occurs within His dominion. Nothing occurs in that which Allah owns and is the sovereign king of. Nothing occurs within His dominion except with His knowledge and with His pre-decree. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Surah at-Tahaawiyyyah, the 81st Surah, Ayah 29, with the explanation, and you will not will except and unless Allah wills, Allah, the Lord of the whole of creation. Shaykh al Fawzan said, so it, meaning what occurs, it is what Allah ordained and pre-decreed, and what He wrote in Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, and what He wrote in the preserved tablet. So everything which occurs in the creation is by the qada and qadr, is by the ordainment and the pre-decree of Allah. Then at-Tahaawee continues, these points following on one from each other. غَلَبَتْ مَشِيئَتُهُ الْمَشِيئَاتِ كُلَّهَا. His will overcomes all wills. His will overcomes all wills. Shaykh al Fawzan said, quoting the same ayah as evidence, He, the Most High, said, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. Surah at-Tahawiyyah, the 81st Surah, Ayah 29, with the explanation, and you will not will except as and unless Allah wills. Shaykh al Fawzan said, so He affirmed will for the servant. Allah affirmed that the servant does have will. However, it enters under the will of Allah. It is underneath the will of Allah. And the person is not able to will something unless Allah wills it. Then at-Tahaawee, rahimahullah, he said, that's point 185 here, وَغَلَبَ قَضَاؤُهُ الْحِيَلَ كُلَّهَا. And His pre-decree overcomes all attempts. Or His pre-decree overcomes all efforts. Shaykh al Fawzan said, Hafidhahullah, whatever means you are, and whatever you do, if Allah has not decreed the result of your means, then the means will not benefit you. And all actions will not benefit if Allah, the Mighty and Majestic, has not decreed for you that you benefit from them. So therefore, what is upon you is to carry out the means. However, the tawfiq, the success, is from Allah. So you are commanded to carry out the means. So you are commanded to carry out the means. I mean, what's upon you, is to carry out the means that you need to try and attain the result. As for the successful attainment of that result, the tawfiq for that is from Allah alone. Then Imam at-Tahaawee rahimahullaah continued, يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَهُوَ غَيْرُ ظَالِمٍ أَبَدًا. And then he quotes a part in brackets that's in some manuscripts and not in others. Or it's in brackets in some versions because it's not in some of the manuscripts. تَقَدَّسَ عَنْ كُلِّ سُوءٍ وَحَيْنٍ وَتَنَزَّهَ عَنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ وَشَيْنٍ. He does whatever he wishes, and he is never unjust. He is pure and free of every evil and tribulation, and he is free and far removed from every deficiency and blemish. Shaykh al Fawzan said in explanation, so Allah does whatever he wishes, from good or evil, and from bestowing favor or punishing, and he is never unjust to his servants, because he puts all affairs in their correct places. So he places favor and he grants success to those who are deserving of that. And he deprives of success, and he deprives of obedience to him those who are deserving of that. And he is not unjust. So he does not punish the person who is obedient and righteous. And he does not reward the disobedient person for his disobedience. I mean, that would be unjust. That would be unjust. If the disobedient person, when he disobeys Allah, that Allah rewards him for that disobedience. Or the opposite, if a person was obedient to Allah, did acts of obedience to Allah, then Allah punished him for those acts of obedience. That would be injustice, but Allah does not do that. As the Shaykh said, so he does not punish the person who is obedient and righteous, and he does not reward the sinful person for his disobedience. So Allah the Perfect is the one who is perfect in his self, perfect in his that, and the one who is perfect in his names and his attributes, and the one who is perfect in his actions and his creating. He, the one free of all imperfections and the Most High. And just briefly, with regard to this point, that Allah does not wrong the people, He does not oppress the people, and some of the explainers like Shaykh al Albaani, rahimahullaah, and others, they mention the point that Allah does not wrong the people. He is never unjust to the people. And it is not because of inability. Contrary to what some people say, that Allah is incapable of being unjust. And therefore He is never unjust because He can't be unjust. Because that would not be praise of Allah. If Allah was not unjust, because He can't be unjust, it's incapable of being unjust, that would not be something praiseworthy. It would be just incapacity. Rather, Allah, as the Shaykh said, Shaykh al Albaani and others from the explainers, they say rather Allah would be capable of being unjust, but He is not unjust. If He wished, He could be unjust, but He does not be unjust. He is never unjust to His servants. Not out of incapacity or being incapable of being unjust, rather He chooses from His justice, from the opposite, from His perfect justice, that He is never unjust to the people. Then Shaykh al Fawzan, Imam at-Tahaawee, rahimahullaah, he continued with what we'll take as the last point today. Insha'Allah, لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. The ayah, لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون, meaning He is not to be questioned about what He does, but rather they will be questioned. Shaykh al Fawzan said, and likewise, He, the Perfect, is not to be questioned about whatever He does. And then he gives the reason. He said, because everything which He does is done for a hikmah. Everything which He does, every single thing which Allah does, is done for a wise purpose. And it occurs in its correct place. But as for the servants, as for the people, then they will be questioned, because they make mistakes, or they do things which are wrong. And they place matters in other than their correct places. So this shows the difference between the Creator and the creation. So with regard to Allah, then no deficiency whatsoever occurs in His actions. And as for the servant, then he does commit oppression. He does do wrong, and he has envy, and he has pride, and he has with him affairs which necessitate that he does things which are wrong in his affairs and his activities. Walhamdulillah wa sallallahu ala Muhammad. That's the end of the Shaykh al Fawzan's explanation of that point. Any points of clarification? That's what he's looking for. What we're just looking for is a reference for the last ayah. If anyone knows the reference for the last ayah that was quoted, لا يسأل عما يفعل. The ayah. According to the brother with a piece of technology in his hand there, that reference is Surah Al Anbiya, Ayah 23. Got myself. Yeah, this piece of technology is correct, inshallah. Yeah, Surah Al Anbiya, quite surprisingly. Surah Al Anbiya, the 22nd surah, ayah 23. La yus'alu amma yaf'alu wa hum yus'alun. Allah is not to be asked about everything which He does. Allah is not to be asked about anything which He does. Rather, the people are questioned. Taha is 21. Anbiya is 22, yeah. Ayah 23. Yeah. Jazakallah khairan. Let's write that down. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك